Welcome to Property Mama Adventures in Real Estate, episode 33. It's here each week I share the various real estate shenanigans that I have seen, experienced, or heard about in almost 3 decades of buying and selling real estate. If not met before, my name is Wendy Chamberlain and I'm a buyer's advocate, buyer's agent here in Melbourne, Australia. So recently in our most previous episode, we shared about the bits and pieces and why it's important to do a final inspection and some of the things and stories that I've heard about what people have found when they go to do their final inspection. I think one of the main things that is a problem is that people just leave their gear, their stuff behind. And that's pretty mild, but we have done inspections where there's so much stuff that you have to get a skip and get it removed. And so that just seems to be part and parcel. So the rule is, certainly here in Victoria, if you need a screwdriver to remove it, well then it has to stay. But if it is something that is fairly easy to remove, then it has to go. So we've had incidences where there's been fence panels, like those temporary fence panels, that were sitting between a garage and the fence, the actual timber fence. And so our clients didn't want to have those things. They wanted those removed from site. So we asked for those to be removed. It can be sometimes things just like that. So they're fairly innocent things that people might have accumulated over time. Because when you live in a property, you just accumulate stuff. In the garden, there's always so much stuff in the garden. But it also can be junk or bits and pieces in a property that need to be removed as well. So things like that are pretty easy, pretty straightforward. If you can organise for the vendor to pay for it to be removed, because it is their responsibility to get rid of things like that, then happy days. That's pretty straightforward. But there can be other things, like, for example, where appliances aren't working. We've had clients check and the oven range hood has not worked, and that is a fixture that was working when the property was purchased, and so something like that had to be replaced. I heard about recently, this one is actually quite funny. So this particular person was buying an apartment, and as part of the apartment, down in the car park, there was a storage cage. So they had taken lots and lots of photos throughout the process of purchasing the property. So they had a record of everything, but they didn't take a photo of the storage cage. So when they went along to do the final inspection, the property had been cleared out. The actual home itself, the apartment, was nice and cleared, and that was ready. And they went down to the garage to check the storage cage, and the storage cage was absolutely chock-a-block, filled with junk, filled with stuff. I mean, it's a storage cage. Have you ever had a storage cage? You just basically push everything in and shut the door behind it. So there was a lot of stuff still in the storage cage. So the purchaser flagged that they wanted that to be cleared out, because they didn't want to take all that stuff. That's not their stuff. That has to be removed. And the vendor, the seller, agreed to do that. So they were going to clear out the storage cage. But what they didn't say they were going to do is that they clearly must have lost the key to the padlock. And so when the person who had purchased the property went back to check that the storage cage had been cleared out, it had. But in order to do so, the vendor had cut a hole in the front gate of the storage cage, just large enough so they could get all their items out. And as I said, this particular person didn't have photos of the storage cage. They just didn't think to take them. And apparently the cage had been broken into at some time in the past. And so the vendor just claimed that when the cage was broken into, it got damaged and it had never been repaired. It had been repaired, and it was in a repaired state at the time of the settlement of the sale, but the purchaser didn't have any photographic evidence that it had been, And the vendor did a bit of a dodgy thing, and they pulled up all the records of when the cage had been damaged and said, look, here's proof that the cage got damaged and it never got repaired. So this poor purchaser was having to then inherit this cage that had this big hole in the door because wouldn't it be easier to cut the padlock? You would have thought so, wouldn't you? Anyway, they because it's like that chain mesh stuff. They must have gone in and snipped it all and just put a hole in the front of the cage and took out their belongings, and the cage was presented empty, which is what was requested, just not in the manner that most of us would say would be acceptable. So that's something that I've heard that's happened when someone's gone to do their final inspection and asked for something to be repaired. Here's another funny one. Can you imagine if this is something that had happened to you? So somebody had purchased a property, all good, all was going fine. They were just waiting for the time for the settlement to go through its time frame that it does. And then it came time for the final inspection. So they went out to the property to do the final inspection, only there wasn't any house there anymore. So the vendor had removed the house. All that was left on the block were the some stumps and the plumbing. You know how the pipes that come up from the ground for the plumbing and the for all of the facilities. So that the lot was basically vacant. There was no house anymore on the lot, and there was just what was left there that you could put another house back on, I guess, if you wanted to. So questions were asked about that as to where's the house, because you are buying the house. It's the capital improved value of the property. So that's so the vendor had to return the house. What they were doing with the house, who knows? Where the house was put, I don't know. Maybe it was one of those, you might have seen it advertised that sometimes you can relocate a house. You can buy a house and it says, have the house for free, but you've got to come and remove it. And have you ever seen those trucks going down the road? You've got two sides of a house. They've come in and they've cut the house in the middle, going and cut it down the middle, and then they've loaded it onto the back of semi-trailers. And they've put one half on one semi-trailer. They put the other half on the other semi-trailer. And then they've tied it all on, and then off they go. And then you've got a mobile home for a period of time until it arrives at its new place of residence, and then they unload it, and then they just reconnect it all up, and you've got an instant house. Well, clearly that's what these vendors had in mind, that they have moved the house somewhere, whether they sold it or whatever, because they obviously wanted to do something else with the house. They were selling the land, but they must have liked the house and they took it away. So they were required to return the house. So these are the kind of things you go, what do you mean I've bought a house and the house is gone? Yeah, well, clearly it happens. Something else that I heard about, and this is why it is so important to have the right people on your team. And when it comes to things like real estate and reading contracts of sale and understanding contracts of sale, that you get your legal representative to read it with a fine-tooth comb, flag anything on there that is a bit not sure what's going on here, or even yourself when you read it, if there's something on there that you don't understand, double check, triple check. So these people were purchasing a block of land, and they'd gone out to the estate to choose the block of land that they thought was going to be the best for the lifestyle that they wanted, and they'd chosen this block of land on a hill. It had sweeping views of the valley, and they had plans that they were going to buy this block of land, and then they were going to build their dream home on this block of land. And they were going to orient the home that they were building in such a way that they would be able to take in these amazing valley views. These views were never going to get built out, and that was going to be their dream home, their forever home. So in conjunction with the real estate agent, they signed the contract of sale. Everything was fine. It was going through the process of the land settling and so forth. And settlement happened. Settlement went through, and these people thought, right, they're going to go celebrate. They're going to go out. They're going to go with champagne and a bit of a picnic, and they're going to go out to their block of land. They're going to sit down on their block of land, and they're going to enjoy the view, and they're going to dream, and they're going to imagine, and they're going to plan building their amazing home on their new property that they've just purchased. So they head out to the property, to the estate, and they head up to the hill, to the block of land that they've just purchased. And what do they find? They find another house has been half built. Construction has already started on the block of land that they've just purchased. And they go, what is going on here? Why is somebody building a block of land building a house on our block of land? Well, it turns out that when they went in to sign the contract with the real estate agent switched out and changed the block of land that they were buying. And you wouldn't believe it, the block of land that they ended up buying was down in the valley, was this far inferior block of land down in the valley with no views, no ambiance at all, because a switcheroo had been done and they didn't realise the contract wasn't checked properly. It wasn't picked up by their legal representative, by their solicitor, didn't pick up that the lot number was not the property number of what they were thinking they were buying. Nobody looked at a map of the estate to make sure that the one that on the map, so I don't know if you've ever seen when there's a subdivision, there's usually a larger map, and then all the lots are divided up on the map. And so you can choose and see how your lot looks and appears against all of the other ones. You've got the roads, and maybe there's a court, and they've got the ones around here and where the parks are going to be. So you can see on the bigger picture where your block of land is. Nobody did that. Nobody checked where the block of land was going to. And they ended up buying this block down in the valley with no view, totally not the block that they wanted. But what do? That's actually, the contract was for the block of land that you purchased because it wasn't checked. And so you've gone ahead, you've waited for you'd be a bit disappointed, wouldn't you? So this is why it is so important to make sure that everything is double checked, triple checked. When it comes to real estate, there is a rule of thumb that everything needs to be in writing and that everything needs to be checked. And it's where you are relying on professionals such as your solicitor, your legal representative, to know that you are buying the right property. And these things do get checked. You'll see a lot of subdivision and there's all these numbers, and it go back hundreds of years for making sure. But from the new estates, obviously, this was missed, this wasn't checked. So who knows? I guess, well, they probably just went ahead and sold the block of land. Who knows? It wasn't the block they wanted. So that dream didn't materialise for them. So all kinds of different things can happen for final inspection. So it is, or for settlement, where people are not doing their job properly. And it happens all the time. Contracts of sale are quite cumbersome, detailed documents. And we also do see quite often, all the time, that paperwork is missing. So depending on the type of property that you're purchasing, when you're buying, make sure you check that everything is included, because oftentimes things are missing. And it could be perhaps a renovation or changes to the home were done, and there needs to be insurance paperwork that goes along with that. If the property was renovated as an owner-builder, then there's additional paperwork that may need to go along with that. It depends on how long ago things went through, because there's timelines on things. There's timelines for insurances. There's timelines for when things need to apply. For example, building of decks is a big one, where a deck has been added to a property. Have the necessary permits been obtained from the council? Now, this can be a tricky one. Anytime there's anything to do with permits being there or not and timelines, because after a certain period of time, there is no longer a need for things to have to apply that necessarily permits. And when it comes to building decks, and there's a difference between a deck that is just the lower half and a deck that is covered. Sometimes decks that are just the lower don't need a permit. If they're covered, they do need a permit. When I say it's a slippery slope and it's a tricky situation, because you need to make a call between finding out the information, whether the vendor has that information, whether the real estate agent has that information, or whether they even, which they may or may not, and they may be prepared to give it to you, they may not be prepared to give it to you, but oftentimes you can find it out by going and talking to the local council. Now, here's the rub with that. If you go to the council and ask a question, you might think that you're just trying to ascertain something, some information which is going to help you. If the question that you ask raises further questions with the council, which thereby mean that they will ask questions, you could be the one that ends up being stuck with having to fix it up or repair it. So let me explain. Let's say you're looking to buy a property and you're not sure whether the deck is meeting code, or a permit was obtained for the deck or the addition that's been added to the house. You've asked the real estate agent to ask the vendor. They don't know, or they're not providing information. So what do? You can go to the council and ask, but if the council has no record of this structure being added to the property, they may come out and investigate. If they do investigate, they may need the structure to be brought up to code, or sometimes entirely, completely demolished. So you could be buying a house with this amazing deck on the back that is a fabulous entertaining area, but if it's unclear that the vendor sought the necessary approvals for it, then as soon as you get a council involved, they're going to ask questions. And if the questions that are asked don't have the answers that they want, or probably more importantly, the answers that you want, you could be the one that's on the hook to get it fixed. So we've heard of cases where entire structures are having to be pulled down because they don't meet code, and then you would be the one responsible for rebuilding it and paying to have it reconstructed. Or they might say, well, it can stay, but you have to do X, Y, and Z to bring it up to code. And again, there's an expense. So this is where the rub lies. Do you let the sleeping dog lie and go, well, because after a certain time frame, as I said, it expires the need. There's no further need for these permits to be sought. But if you do go and ask questions, well, then sometimes that raises attention in areas where you may not wish that to be the case. So that's a decision for you to make in relation to that, anything to do with what might be in a contract or provided. And it comes up quite commonly. It actually comes up quite commonly where certainly in Victoria, there is a box that is checked as to whether there's been any construction on the property within the last 7 years. I think it is, could be 10. I think it's 7 years. And if you go look at a property and you know that something's been done to that property inside that time frame, like it's much newer than what they've said, and then they haven't included that information, then that can be a question for you to ask. But be aware that if you start opening that box, you know that there could be the consequence that if that's the home you love and that's the home you buy, and you've asked that question with the council, if they require there to be remediation there, that you could be the one that has to pay for that. So just something to keep in mind there. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today was the kind of services that we offer here at Chamberlain Property Advocates. As I've mentioned before, I've been buying and selling real estate for nearly 30 years. So we have a lot of experience, myself and our team, in being able to help you to find your dream home. So we offer bidding at auction services. It is one of the most stressful things that buyers find because emotion gets involved. And I've spoken about how it can affect an auction and people buying properties on other episodes of the podcast. And emotion is not a state to be in when it comes to buying real estate. Real estate should be you making a decision in a calm arena where you've done your due diligence, you understand the value of that home compared to what else has been selling in that neighborhood, in that suburb, and you've made a decision about what you want to spend on that home. And you go to auction and it all flies out the window. Well, this is where we step in for you, because we are that level head required for you to buy your property. We don't get emotional about it. I love real estate, but we do not get emotional about the buying of homes for clients. So if you may not be available on the day of the auction, you might be interstate, you might be looking to buy from another area, overseas perhaps, or interstate, and you need someone to be there to bid for you, that is a service that we offer to you. Just get in touch with us. We also offer a negotiation service as well. So sometimes clients, they have already found their dream home, or they might even be renting the home they want to buy. We've done that too for clients as well, where they just need that helping hand, someone that with that background and that knowledge and that expertise to be able to step in and negotiate that purchase for them. And that is something that we do for our clients. We are able to ascertain where we see true market value for that home and give that honest, independent advice to our client about the value of a property, and then step in there and negotiate on their behalf with the real estate agent to buy their property. And of course, we also have our full service if that's what you're after. If you want us to be able to open up the entire world of availability to homes that are for sale, and that includes homes that are off market, ones that are not advertised, they're not available yet. And there is an entire off market, sometimes also called a secret listing, a pocket listing. We also have pre-markets, properties that are going to be coming to the market, but sometimes we can step in there and we can secure those for our clients as well. So head to chamberlainadvocates.com.au and get in touch, and we'll have that conversation and see how we too can help you move into your perfect new home. Of course, the podcast comes out every single week. If you're loving the podcast, getting it in your ears, please do share it with your family, your friends, your colleagues. We'd love to get the word out there about have people join in and just be able to have a bit of a laugh, bit of a wow, really? Is that what they said about the shenanigans that happen in real estate? If you're loving it, please do give us a thumbs up on your favourite platform. And as always, once again, I have enjoyed having you here with me, share some more real estate stories. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans and adventures in real estate. Once again, thanks for joining me, and bye-bye for now.